Today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the screen on an iPad 7, 8, 9, iPad Air, and iPad 5th generation. Also the 6th generation. They're all very similar. And this iPad had been repaired before, so there's adhesive, aftermarket adhesive, which makes it a little bit easier to remove the screen. And off camera, what I did was I heated up the back of the iPad with a hot plate. So I put it on a hot plate for about 2 to 3 minutes until it got warm enough to touch, hot enough to touch. It shouldn't burn you, but it should just be hot enough to where you need gloves to grab it. And also using a little bit of alcohol helps just cut right through the adhesive. And as you see, it's already open. I might be going a little too fast in this video, but take your time and just gently. I mean, this iPad's in really good condition. The digitizers went out, so we had to replace it. But most of the times your iPad won't look like this. It's gonna be shattered. So take your time, use alcohol, use heat, and just if it has to come piece by piece, just take your time. And here we're removing all 4 corner screws holding down the LCD. We use a little plastic pry tool to bring it up. And so on the iPad 7, 8, and 9, and also the iPad 6, it's a little bit more different. On this iPad 5th generation, you could just lift up the LCD with those 4 screws that came out. On the iPad 7, 8, 9, they have a little bit of adhesive on the corners. So just be careful not to just pry up. I'm gonna make another video for the 7, 8, 9, but yeah, just have to lift up a little bit different on that one. So I removed the LCD. As you could tell, it's a couple of screws, they just came right off. I always use some sort of a pry tool. I never use metal tools to remove the connectors because at this point the battery is still attached, and if I bridge anything, I could cause a short, causing backlight issues or just issues that you don't want. Then at that point we had to do motherboard repair. Here removing all the old adhesive from the frame, and like I said, this was already repaired at some point, so it's easier to do so. Take your time in this doing this. One of the things to look out for is don't go too fast, or you might slip and nick that battery, and if you damage the battery, it could either combust and erupt into flames, or you'll leave a mark on there and you have to replace the battery. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to lift up the board just a tiny bit so the battery doesn't have a connection to the board. Separate the battery, that way you don't have any power going to any of the lines. And now I'm going to remove the home button and the home button bracket. And this part you have to be very careful. You don't want to damage that home button. Technically you can replace the home button, but you won't get Touch ID back, so be careful to not damage that home button at all. And here's the new screen. I'm gonna have to install the bracket and the home button to this screen. So this home button didn't have the rubber seal around it, which holds it in place. If you don't have this seal, what it does is it's a little gasket basically, and if you don't have it, it's gonna keep twisting the home button around, and it's not gonna be stable. And if you have kids and they love to just keep on pressing on that home button and are not careful, it could potentially rip the home button from the cable. So it's important to put it back together. You don't 100% need it, but you should if you have this part, which is readily available. It's pretty straightforward how you put it on there. And there's indentations on the rubber gasket on the alignment orientation. It's a little complicated with gloves and tweezers. Everything loves to stick to gloves, but nonetheless, you should always wear gloves because when you're dealing with customer devices, some of them can be pretty dirty. Even if you clean them, it's still pretty dirty. And also, you don't want to leave fingerprints all over a customer device or inside of the iPad. I like to leave iPads as clean as possible. If for any reason they have to go to the Apple Store to get service, they'll know someone to replace the screen, but at least they won't claim that we as an industry have low standards of being clean and keeping things as professional as possible. So what I recommend to all techs is use gloves, clean after yourselves, make sure that iPad looks nice and clean from the inside out. And there you go. I managed to get it on the home button. At this point, the camera's a little shaky, but it'll get better here soon. And I'm adding double-sided sticky tape to hold the bracket down. Some people like to use B7000. Some people claim they can use super glue. I've never had issues with using this double-sided 3M red tape. It holds pretty strong as long as you put enough of it and you align it properly. So I'm going to show you here in a second how to align the home button with the bracket. And add a little bit to the end there. And there's already adhesive left on the cable. So all you want to do is put adhesive in places where it folds, and that way it's not just moving up and down. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, it's on there. Then I flip it around just to make sure that it's flush. Sometimes either you have to remove move the gasket around, or there's a metal little circle gasket that also might be too thick. You need to replace that. But in this one, it was perfect. And specifically with these screens, they come with two lines that you're able to align the home button to, and it's really easy to do so. If you don't have those lines, you're gonna have to eye it and then just go back and forth and make sure the home button's clicking properly. And if it's clicking properly, that means you had a good alignment. I like to make a little indentation of the back of the bracket. Sometimes the glass can be a little too thick. It's because it is aftermarket screen, and that just kind of gives it a little bit more of a the nipple on the home button makes better contact with the bracket, allowing it to have a better click through. And also there's adhesive there, and it's also going to keep the home button aligned and in place, the home button ribbon cable. And then just plug them into the motherboard. These are pretty easy, pretty straightforward. You can't really go wrong plugging these in. I guess you could, but the rule of thumb is if it's using too much force, it's not going in, don't force it. You should be able to align it and hear it click. Okay, now it's time to put the LCD back in there. For some reason my camera kept shaking, so I gotta figure out what's going on with that, but that's later. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward to align these things. As long as you're not putting too much pressure, it'll just click right into place. And if it's not, figure out why. Take it off and try to realign it again. It's always important to turn it on and do a small test on the digitizer just to make sure that it's working properly. It might take a minute or two here to boot up. Now that it's in the screen, just start going up and down. If you don't have the passcode, which I didn't have the passcode for this iPad, you could just do this, and as long as you're going up and down, you should get all the dead spots if there's any, and there's none here, so it's time to put it all together. Let's put all the 3 screws holding the LCD plate down or into place. Making sure that screw for the battery is in place as well. If it's not properly seated, it's just making a contact. If it's making just barely enough contact, if the iPad gets tossed around, then it could potentially come loose and the iPad won't turn on. And you don't want to do the whole process all over again. Just make sure that battery connection is making good contact and it's nice and tight. And we're gonna put all the 4 screws on each corner. We're basically just doing the same thing in reverse. Also, if you can magnetize your screwdriver, go ahead and do so. It's a pain if your screwdriver is not magnetized. It just makes the job easier with a magnetized screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver. And what we do here is I use a compressor to air compressor to get all the little dust left behind. Remove all the adhesive strips. And if you don't have a screen that comes with pre-installed adhesive, you could use that double-sided 3M red tape all around the frame. Not the frame of the screen, but the frame of the iPad. And that way you could do the same. It's basically the same thing. You're just gonna have to peel it off from this frame instead of the screen. Alright, we're going to seal it. There was a little piece of foam that's sticking out, so let's cut that out. Make sure the ribbon cable, it likes to stick to the top of the screen. Make sure it's inside of the frame. If you leave it stick to the screen, it's going to cause lifting because it's not making proper contact between the glass and the frame. So you gotta make sure that it's inside of the frame. Perfect. Now that we know that that's inside of the frame, we can seal it all the way around. There you go. And it's a pretty straightforward repair. It's not too difficult. It's just more tedious than anything. Just make sure that you are taking your time, and yeah, it should be good. Well, there you have it, all fixed.